My name is Thomas Mitchell, and I'm 34 years old. Yesterday, my parents called to tell me they're homeless and need to move in with me. The same parents who sold my childhood home 6 months ago to pay off my brother Ryan's gambling debts. The same parents who told me I was selfish for being upset about losing the house I'd been promised since I was 12. Let me take you back to where this all started, 1422 Maple Street, a 2-story colonial in the suburbs of Boston. That house wasn't just 4 walls and a roof, it was my entire childhood. Every pencil mark on the kitchen doorframe marking my height, every creaky step on the staircase, every inch of the backyard where I learned to ride a bike, that house was woven into my DNA. I remember the day we moved in. I was born 5 years later, but my parents told the story so often it felt like my own memory. Dad had just gotten his CPA certification. Mom had landed her first teaching job at the local elementary school. They'd saved for 7 years to afford the down payment. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had maintained it perfectly. Original hardwood floors, crown molding, a clawfoot tub in the upstairs bathroom. "This is it," Dad had said, holding Mom's hand as they stood in the empty living room. "This is where we'll raise our family. This is where we'll grow old together." My parents, Frank and Dorothy Mitchell, weren't rich, but they were stable. Dad's parents had immigrated from Ireland in the 1960s, working in factories and saving every penny to give their children better opportunities. Mom came from a working-class family in Southie. They met at UMass Boston, 2 first-generation college students determined to build something lasting. They raised my brother Ryan and me in that house with traditional values. Work hard, save money, family comes first. But even then, the double standard was clear. Ryan's report cards went on the refrigerator even when they were mediocre. Mine went in a drawer even when they were perfect. "Ryan needs more encouragement," Mom would explain. "You're naturally smart, Thomas. He has to work harder." But Ryan never worked harder. He charmed his way through life, talking teachers into grade improvements, convincing coaches to give him second chances, persuading our parents that every failure was someone else's fault. I was 11 when I first realized Ryan was the favorite. He'd stolen money from Mom's purse, $60 she'd saved for groceries. I saw him take it, told my parents, and somehow I ended up grounded for tattling, while Ryan got a gentle lecture about borrowing without asking. That night, I sat in my room, the smaller bedroom of course, because Ryan needed more space, and made a decision. If I couldn't be the favorite, I'd be the responsible one. The one they could count on. The one who would take care of them when they were old. But I didn't mind being the responsible one. I had a plan, and that plan centered around 1422 Maple Street. When I was 12, my grandfather, my father's father, was dying of lung cancer. He'd lived with us for his final months, in the guest room that overlooked Mom's garden. I spent every day after school sitting with him, reading him stories, listening to his memories. One afternoon, when the pain medication made him particularly lucid, he called me closer. "Thomas, my practical boy," he whispered, his Irish accent still thick after decades in America. "I need to talk to you about something important." "What is it, Grandpa?" He glanced toward the door, making sure we were alone. "Your brother. He's got a weakness in him. I've seen it before, in my own brother back in Dublin. The kind of weakness that swallows families whole." "Ryan's not weak," I protested, still defending him despite everything. "Not weak in body, lad. Weak in character. He'll take and take until there's nothing left. I've watched your parents give him everything while you get the scraps." "They love us both equally," I parroted what I'd been told. Grandpa's laugh turned into a cough. When he recovered, he fixed me with those sharp blue eyes. "Love isn't measured in words, Thomas. It's measured in actions. And their actions tell a different story." He was quiet for a moment, then reached for my hand with his frail fingers. "You're the steady one. Your parents will need you when they're old. That house will be yours one day, and you'll take care of them there. But you need to protect it from Ryan. Promise me." "How do I protect it?" "By being smarter than him. By being indispensable. By making sure your parents know that you're their future, not him. Promise me, Thomas. Promise you'll protect this house and take care of them when they can't take care of themselves. I promised. And I built my entire life around that promise. Grandpa died 2 weeks later. At the funeral, Ryan showed up late, hungover from a party the night before. My parents made excuses for him. He grieves differently, Mom said. I held my tongue and remembered my promise. After Grandma's death, I threw myself into being the perfect daughter. Straight A's, honor roll, National Honor Society. I got a job at 16 bagging groceries and gave half my paycheck to my parents for household expenses. David, who was 19 and living at home, contributed nothing. He's trying to find himself, Dad would say when I asked why David didn't have to work. Finding himself apparently meant sleeping until noon, playing video games all afternoon, and going out with friends every night. But I didn't complain. The responsible daughter never complains. I chose UMass Boston for college, just like my parents had. I could have gotten into better schools. My guidance counselor practically begged me to apply to MIT, but better schools meant leaving home. Leaving home meant abandoning my promise to Grandma. You sure about this? My best friend Amy asked when I showed her my acceptance letter. You could go anywhere. Why stay here? My family needs me, I said. Your family, or your brother? Amy had watched the dynamic for years. She'd seen David wreck 3 cars while I drove the same beat-up Honda. She'd watched him get bailed out of every consequence while I got lectures for being 5 minutes late for curfew. It's complicated, I told her. No, she said. It's really not. But I stayed. I lived at home to save money, commuting to campus on the T. I studied accounting like my father, figuring it was practical, stable, something that would let me take care of my parents when the time came. I watched my friends move into dorms, join sororities, have the full college experience while I caught the 7:18 a.m. train every morning. David, meanwhile, had discovered gambling in college. He'd enrolled at Northeastern. Of course my parents paid for him to go to a private university while I went to state school, but spent more time at the poker tables than in class. The first sign of trouble came during my sophomore year. David called the house at 2 a.m., voice shaking. I need help, he said. I'm in trouble. Dad and I drove to a sketchy apartment building in Allston. David was sitting on the curb, nose bloodied, shirt torn. What happened? Dad asked, helping him into the car. Poker game went bad. I owe some guys money. How much? $5,000. I gasped from the back seat. That was more than a semester's tuition at UMass. David, where did you think you'd get $5,000? Dad asked. I was winning. I was up $3,000, but then, the cards went cold. It happens. I just need to pay these guys and I'll quit, I swear. Dad paid them. Of course he did. He took it out of the home equity line of credit they'd opened for emergencies. This is a one-time thing, he told David sternly. You need to get help. David nodded, contrite. I will. I promise. No more gambling. The promise lasted exactly 1 month. By the time David flunked out of Northeastern, he owed money to 3 different bookies, had maxed out 2 credit cards my parents had co-signed, and had sold his laptop, his watch, and anything else of value he owned. He's sick, Mom said when I questioned why they kept bailing him out. Addiction is a disease. Then get him treatment, I said. He says he doesn't need it. He can quit on his own. How's that working out? Sarah, he's your brother. Show some compassion. Compassion. I was 20 years old, working 30 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, and they wanted me to show compassion for the brother who'd stolen my birthday money to bet on basketball games. After graduation, I got a job at a local accounting firm, Brennan and Associates. The starting salary was $42,000, but there was room for growth. More importantly, it was in Boston. I needed to be near my parents, near the house that would one day be mine and theirs again when they needed care. I found a tiny studio apartment in Medford, Close enough to help but far enough to have some independence. The rent was $800 a month, which left me just enough to live on and save. I furnished it with thrift store finds and hand-me-downs, putting every extra penny into savings. "Why don't you get a nicer place?" Mom asked when she visited. "Maybe a one-bedroom?" "I'm saving money," I explained. "For what?" I couldn't tell her the truth, that I was saving to eventually buy their house from them when they were ready to downsize, keeping it in the family like Grandma wanted. So I just said, "For the future." David, meanwhile, had moved back home after dropping out. He was supposedly looking for work, but mostly he was running up online poker debts. My parents paid for everything: his food, his cell phone, his car insurance on yet another vehicle they'd bought him. "When is he going to contribute?" I asked during Sunday dinner. "When he finds the right opportunity," Dad said. "Not everyone can just fall into a good job like you did." Fall into it. I'd sent out 73 resumes, gone on 15 interviews, and accepted a position that paid $10,000 less than my classmates because it kept me in Boston. But sure, I'd fallen into it. By 25, I had $50,000 in the bank. My future down payment for when I'd eventually need to buy the house from my parents at a family-friendly price, as we discussed. Well, as Dad and I had discussed. Mom always changed the subject when it came up, and David didn't know about the plan at all. "That house is worth at least $600,000 now," Dad had said. "But when the time comes, we could sell it to you for $300,000. Keep it in the family, you know. I'll have more than that saved by then," I promised. "I know you will. You're my responsible girl." I lived like a monk to make that happen. My co-workers went out for drinks. I went home. They took vacations to Cancun. I spent my PTO days helping my parents with house repairs. They bought new cars. I kept nursing my ancient Honda along. My dating life was essentially non-existent. I'd had a few relationships, but they always ended the same way. "You're 27, my ex-boyfriend Marcus said during our breakup. "Most people our age are thinking about starting their own lives, not planning to take care of their parents." "Family is important to me," I said. "Your family, or your family's house? What's the difference?" "The fact that you don't know is why this isn't working." He moved to Seattle a month later. I helped my parents clean out their gutters and tried not to think about what I was missing. David's gambling escalated when he turned 30. He discovered online sports betting, and suddenly he could lose money 24/7 from the comfort of his childhood bedroom. The emergence of smartphone apps made it even worse. He was literally betting on his phone while sitting at family dinners. "David, put the phone away," Mom would say gently. "Just checking something," he'd mutter, frantically refreshing scores. One night, I caught him trying to use my laptop to place bets after his had been mysteriously broken. "Get away from my stuff," I snapped. "Come on, Sarah. Just one bet. I've got a sure thing on the Celtics game." "You've been saying you have a sure thing for 10 years. When are you going to admit you have a problem? When are you going to stop being such a tight-ass about money?" he shot back. "Just because you live like a pauper doesn't mean the rest of us have to." "I live like someone who pays their own bills," I said. "You should try it sometime." He laughed. "Why would I do that when Mom and Dad are happy to help?" "They're not happy, David. They're scared. There's a difference. They're not scared of me." "No," I agreed. "They're scared of what you'll do if they stop enabling you. They're scared you'll end up dead in an alley because you owe the wrong people money." That's dramatic, even for you. But 3 weeks later, he showed up at the house with a black eye and a split lip. He owed $15,000 to a bookie who was done being patient. My parents refinanced the house to pay it. "This has to stop," I told them. "You're putting your home at risk for his addiction." "The house doesn't matter," Mom said. "David's safety does. The house is your security. It's your biggest asset. What happens when you retire and need that equity?" We'll figure it out, Dad said. We always do. But I could see the strain on their faces. Dad was 67, working overtime when he should have been thinking about retirement. Mom was taking on tutoring jobs in the evening, coming home exhausted. They were killing themselves to fund David's addiction, and he didn't even seem to notice. The next 2 years were a blur of crisis management. David would rack up debts, my parents would scramble to pay them, I would beg them to stop enabling him, and the cycle would repeat. Each time, the amounts got bigger and the consequences got scarier. There was the time he got caught counting cards at Foxwoods and was banned from the casino. Instead of seeing it as a wake-up call, he just found shadier places to gamble. Underground poker games in Chinatown. Illegal sports betting operations run out of backrooms in Southie. Each venue was more dangerous than the last. He's going to get himself killed, I told my parents after David came home with bruised ribs from a game that went bad. Don't say that, Mom whispered, knocking on wood. Don't even think it. Ignoring reality doesn't change it, I said. He needs professional help. Real treatment, not just promises to do better. We've suggested it, Dad said. He won't go. Then stop giving him money. Let him hit rock bottom. We can't just abandon him, Mom said. He's our son. And I'm your daughter, but you don't seem worried about abandoning me. What are you talking about? We've never abandoned you. No, you just take me completely for granted. I'm the one who'll take care of you when you're old, but you're spending my inheritance on David's gambling debts. This isn't about money, Sarah. Everything is about money when you don't have it, I snapped. And at the rate you're going, you won't have any left by the time you need it. The conversation ended like they always did, with my parents defending David and me feeling like the bad guy for pointing out reality. I started seeing a therapist around this time. Dr. Patricia Kim, recommended by my company's EAP program. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that I appreciated. Tell me about your family, she said in our first session. I spent 40 minutes unloading years of frustration. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. You've assigned yourself the role of family protector, she observed. But who's protecting you? I don't need protection. I'm the responsible one. That's an identity, not an answer. When did you decide that being responsible meant sacrificing your own life? I promised my grandmother. You were 12. She interrupted gently. A child. Do you think it's fair to hold an adult to promises made by a child? It's not about fair. It's about family. Is it? Or is it about control? As long as you're the responsible one, you have a role. A purpose. What happens if you let that go? I didn't have an answer. The thought of not being the responsible daughter was terrifying. Who would I be without that identity? But I kept going to therapy, even as the situation at home deteriorated. David's addiction was like a black hole, sucking in everything around it. My parents aged visibly, stress etching lines on their faces. Their savings dwindled. Their marriage strained. I watched them argue more frequently, usually about money. Dad wanted to cut David off. Mom couldn't bear the thought. They'd lower their voices when I entered the room, but I could feel the tension. You could leave, Dr. Kim suggested during one session. Move to another city. Start fresh. I can't leave them, I said automatically. Can't, or won't. Both. Neither. I don't know. I rubbed my temples. If I leave, who takes care of them when David inevitably destroys everything? Maybe that's not your responsibility. But I promised. Your grandmother is gone, Sarah. The only person holding you to that promise is you. But I couldn't let go. The responsible daughter doesn't abandon her post, even when that post is on a sinking ship. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was at work, reviewing tax returns for a client, when my phone buzzed. Mom never called during work hours unless it was an emergency. Sarah, honey, we need to talk to you. Can you come by the house this evening? My stomach clenched. Is everything okay? Is Dad all right? We're fine. We need to discuss something important. As a family. The last time we'd had a family discussion, David had needed $20,000 to pay off credit card debt. The time before that, he'd crashed his car while drunk and needed lawyer money. Family discussions were never good news. Can you give me a hint about what this is about? I asked. Just come by around 7, please. I spent the rest of the day distracted, running through possibilities. Maybe they were finally ready to do an intervention. Maybe they were going to cut David off. Maybe, and this was my secret hope, they were ready to talk about their retirement plans and selling me the house. I arrived at 1422 Maple Street to find David's BMW in the driveway. Red flag number 1. It was a new car. Well, new to him. He'd shown up with it last month, claiming he'd gotten a great deal from a friend. We all knew what that meant. He'd won it in a poker game or, worse, it was collateral from someone who owed him money. I used my key to enter, calling out as I walked through the familiar foyer. The house smelled like Mom's pot roast, usually a comfort, but tonight it made my stomach turn. They were in the living room, Mom and Dad on the couch, David sprawled in Dad's leather recliner like he owned the place. He was scrolling through his phone, not even looking up when I entered. David, Mom said softly. Put the phone away. Sarah's here. He sighed dramatically but slipped the phone into his pocket. For the first time, I got a good look at him. He'd lost weight, his clothes hanging loose. His eyes were bloodshot with dark circles underneath. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. What's going on? I asked, though my sinking stomach already knew. Mom reached for Dad's hand, gripping it like a lifeline. Sarah, you know we love you both equally. Red flag number 2. Conversations that started with parental love declarations never ended well. Just tell me, I said, sitting in Mom's reading chair. Whatever it is, just say it. Dad cleared his throat. David's in trouble. Real trouble this time. I looked at my brother. He was studying the carpet like it held the secrets of the universe, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. How much? I asked, cutting straight to the point. 300,000, David mumbled. The room spun. I gripped the arms of the chair, sure I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? $300,000, he repeated, louder this time. Give or take. Give or take. I laughed, but it came out harsh, almost hysterical. What's a few thousand when you're talking about $300,000? Sarah, please, Mom said. Let him explain. Explain? Explain how someone racks up $300,000 in gambling debts? This should be good. David finally looked up, and I saw fear in his eyes. Real, bone-deep terror. It wasn't supposed to get this big. I was chasing losses, trying to win back what I owed. But the interest, these people charge insane interest. Daily. And when you can't pay. Who do you owe? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The Morettas, he whispered. I knew the name. Everyone in Boston knew the Morettas. They ran loan sharking operations, illegal gambling, probably worse. They were not people you wanted to owe money to. Jesus Christ, David. The mob? You owe $300,000 to the mob. They said they'd hurt him, Mom interrupted, tears streaming down her face. They came to the house, Sarah. These men in suits, they stood right there in our foyer and described what they'd do to David if he didn't pay. So call the police. I can't, David said. That would make it worse. These aren't the kind of people you testify against. They have connections everywhere. Cops, judges, politicians. Going to the police is a death sentence. As opposed to what? What do you think happens when you don't pay them? That's why we need to handle this as a family, Dad said, his voice steady but his hands shaking. We need to pay them. With what money? Do you have $300,000 sitting around? The silence that followed told me everything. My parents exchanged a look, and I knew. I knew before they said it, but I needed to hear the words. We're selling the house, Dad said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, the room tilt sideways. No. No, you can't. The market is good right now, Mom said, as if this was a rational financial decision. We got an assessment last week. The house is worth about $850,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and David's debts, we'll have enough left over to start fresh. Start fresh. I stood up, my legs shaking. You're in your 70s. This house is your security, your retirement, your entire life's work. It's just a building, David said. I whirled on him. Just a building? This is the house where Grandma died. Where we measured our heights on the doorframe. Where Dad taught us to ride bikes in the driveway. Where Mom planted her first garden. This house is our family's history, and you're going to let them sell it because you couldn't stop betting on fucking basketball games. I didn't ask them to sell it. You didn't have to. You knew they'd bail you out like they always do. You've been counting on it your whole life. Enough. Dad's voice cut through our argument. The decision is made. We've already accepted an offer. The floor dropped out from under me. You, what? We didn't want to worry you until it was settled, Mom said, reaching for me. I stepped back, unable to bear her touch. The buyers are paying cash. We close in 30 days. 30 days, I repeated numbly. You're giving me 30 days notice that you're selling my entire childhood. The house I was supposed to inherit. The house where I was going to take care of you. Nobody asked you to plan your life around this house, David said. The rage that filled me was volcanic. No, nobody asked me. Just like nobody asked me to be the responsible one. Nobody asked me to save money while you blew yours. Nobody asked me to stay in Boston while you went to Vegas and Atlantic City and God knows where else. I did it because that's what good daughters do. I did it because I promised Grandma I'd take care of this house and the people in it. Sarah, Mom started. I turned down a job in New York, I continued, my voice rising. Did you know that? Goldman Sachs recruited me out of college. They offered me 6 figures to start. But I turned it down because I needed to stay near you. Near this house. My parents looked stunned. I'd never told them about Goldman Sachs. I dated a wonderful man named Marcus who wanted to move to Seattle for his dream job. I let him go alone because I couldn't leave. I've spent my entire adult life in a shitty apartment, saving every penny, living like a college student while my peers built careers and families and actual lives. And for what? So you could sell it all to save David from the consequences of his choices. We're saving his life, Dad said quietly. What about my life? I asked. What about the life I built here, the life I sacrificed for, the life you promised me? When does that matter? You're being selfish, David said. Selfish? I laughed bitterly. I'm being selfish? I've been subsidizing your lifestyle with my sacrifices for 20 years, and I'm selfish. We know you're upset, Mom said, crying openly now. But we don't have a choice. They'll kill him, Sarah. These men will kill your brother. Then maybe he should have thought of that before he borrowed money from them. The slap came from nowhere. Mom's hand connected with my cheek, the sound echoing in the silent room. We both froze, equally shocked. She'd never hit me before. Never even raised her voice. Really? How can you say that? She whispered. How can you wish death on your own brother? I touched my stinging cheek. I don't wish death on him. I wish consequences. There's a difference. We're selling the house, Dad said firmly. It's done. You can be angry, you can hate us, but it's happening. We're saving our son. And losing your daughter, I said quietly. I hope it's worth it. I left that night and didn't speak to any of them for 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the darkest of my life. I called in sick to work, unable to focus on anything beyond the impending loss of everything I'd worked for. Dr. Kim squeezed me in for emergency sessions, talking me through the grief and rage. It's not just a house, I told her. It's every choice I've made for the last 15 years. Every opportunity one passed up, every dream I deferred. All of it was for nothing. Not for nothing, she corrected gently. You made those choices based on the information you had. Your intentions were good, even if the outcome isn't what you hoped. I feel so stupid. They've shown me over and over that David comes first, and I kept believing that someday it would be different. Hope isn't stupidity. It's human. But now you have to decide, what do you do with this information? I tried everything to stop the sale. I called real estate lawyers, looking for loopholes. I researched the buyers, hoping to find some flaw that would void the sale. Thompson and Associates, they were a young couple from California, paying cash, planning to gut renovate my childhood home into something modern and open concept. Open concept, I muttered to Amy over wine. They're going to tear down the walls where my height marks live. I'm so sorry, Sarah, she said. This is fucked up. The worst part is they're acting like I'm the villain for being upset. Like I should be happy to lose my inheritance to save David from his own choices. Have you talked to them about alternatives? I offered my entire savings, $50,000, as a down payment if they'd sell the house to me instead. I could get a mortgage for the rest. Keep it in the family. What did they say? They need the full amount now. These people won't wait for mortgage approvals. I laughed bitterly. Funny how David's creditors get more consideration than I do. Amy poured more wine. What are you going to do? I don't know. Show up to the closing and make a scene? Chain myself to the front door? Accept that my entire life plan just went up in smoke. Maybe this is a chance to start over, without the weight of that promise. But I wasn't ready to hear that. Not yet. I broke my silence to attend the closing. I needed to see it happen, to witness the end of everything I'd worked for. My parents seemed relieved to see me, mistaking my presence for acceptance. The closing attorney's office was sterile, all beige walls and fluorescent lights. The buyers were what I'd expected, tech money, probably, all designer clothes and entitled attitudes. They talked about their renovation plans while we waited for paperwork. We're thinking of knocking out the wall between the kitchen and living room, the wife said. Really open it up, you know? That wall held 50 years of family photos. I bit my tongue. And that dated bathroom upstairs? We'll gut that completely. Put in a modern spa shower. The clawfoot tub where Mom had bathed us as children. Where I'd soaked after high school heartbreaks. Gone. The bones of the house are good though, the husband added, like he was doing us a favor. We'll keep the exterior mostly the same. How generous. They'd keep the shell while gutting everything that made it home. I watched my parents sign away our family history for $850,000. Dad's hand shook as he signed. Mom kept wiping away tears. After paying off David's debts, the real estate fees, and capital gains taxes, they netted about $400,000. This is enough for a nice apartment, Mom said in the parking lot, trying to sound optimistic. Maybe a condo. Less maintenance. But I knew the truth. In Boston's market, $400,000 wouldn't buy anything close to what they'd had. They'd be renting, at their age, with no equity and no stability. Where's David? I asked. Shouldn't he be here to watch what his addiction cost? He's in rehab, Dad said quietly. We used some of the house money to pay for a good program. 90 days, intensive treatment. How many times has he been to rehab now? This time is different, Mom insisted. He hit rock bottom. Losing the house was his wake-up call. He didn't lose the house, I corrected. You lost the house. He lost nothing. Sarah, please. We're all hurting here. Are we? Because from where I'm standing, David got his debts paid and a vacation at an expensive rehab facility. You got to feel like saviors. And I got to watch my entire future disappear. Tell me again how we're all hurting equally. I left them standing in that parking lot, clutching their check and their delusions. My parents rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Revere. It wasn't a bad area, but it wasn't Lexington either. Going from a 4-bedroom colonial with a yard to 900 square feet of rental space was a shock to their system. I helped them move because, despite everything, I couldn't abandon them completely. But something fundamental had broken between us. The trust was gone. The respect was fractured. The understanding that I thought we'd shared, that family takes care of each other, had been exposed as a lie. Family meant they took care of David. I took care of myself. This isn't so bad, Mom said, trying to arrange their furniture in the cramped living room. The couch that had fit perfectly in their old living room overwhelmed the small space. It's cozy. Cozy was one word for it. I watched Dad struggle to fit his tool collection into a tiny hall closet, no garage for the man who'd spent weekends puttering with projects. Mom had given away her gardening supplies to neighbors, keeping only a few potted plants for the small balcony. The building has an elevator, Dad pointed out, always looking for positives. That'll be good when we get older. When they got older. Like 72 and 70 wasn't already older. Like they hadn't just traded their retirement security for David's gambling debts. Where are you going to put your office? I asked. Dad had always done taxes on the side, using the spare bedroom as his workspace. I'll make do with a corner of the bedroom, he said. I'm cutting back on clients anyway. Cutting back because he couldn't afford the tax software renewals and professional insurance. Cutting back because half his clients had been referrals from neighbors he'd never see again. Cutting back because starting over at 72 was exhausting. David got out of rehab after 30 days, not the full 90 days my parents had paid for. He checked himself out early, claiming he was cured and ready to start fresh. He showed up at their new apartment with a duffel bag and a smile, like nothing had happened. Family dinner, he suggested, looking around the cramped space. Nice place. Very efficient. It's what we could afford, I said pointedly. Sarah, don't start, Mom warned. Start what? Acknowledging reality. David helped himself to a beer from their fridge, my parents' beer that they could barely afford, and flopped onto the couch. Look, I know you're pissed about the house. But I'm going to make it right. I've got a job lined up, and I'm going to pay them back. Every penny. A job doing what? I asked. Marketing. This startup is looking for someone with my skills. What skills? Losing money? Disappointing parents? Destroying families? Sarah. Mom snapped. That's enough. David is trying. He's been trying for 15 years. When do we admit that trying isn't enough? David stood up, attempting to look intimidating. At 6 feet 1 inch, he had 5 inches on me, but I wasn't the scared little sister anymore. You know what your problem is, he said. You're jealous. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. They don't love you more, I said calmly. They're scared of you more. There's a difference. Scared of me? I'm their son. You're their addiction. They can't quit you any more than you can quit gambling. And just like you're gambling, their enabling is going to destroy everything they have left. Get out, Mom said quietly. I turned to her, surprised. What? Get out of my home. I won't have you talking about your brother that way. Your home. This rental that you can barely afford because you sold your home for him. Get out. So I left. And I didn't come back for 2 months. During those 2 months, I made some decisions. I couldn't keep living my life waiting for my parents to see the truth about David. I couldn't keep sacrificing my present for a future that would never come. Dr. Kim helped me work through the grief and anger. You're mourning multiple losses, she explained. The house, yes, but also the fantasy of who your parents were. The promise of being rewarded for your responsibility. The identity you'd built around being the good daughter. So who am I without that? That's for you to discover. And it's actually quite exciting, if you let it be. I started saying yes to things I'd always refused. When my coworkers invited me to happy hour, I went. When my company offered to send me to a conference in Chicago, I accepted. When a handsome client named James asked me to dinner, I agreed. You seem different, James said on our third date. Lighter, somehow. I've been letting go of some old obligations, I told him. Family stuff. Something like that. I didn't tell him the whole story. How could I explain that I'd built my entire life around a house that no longer existed? That I'd been prepared to sacrifice everything for parents who'd already chosen their favorite child? It sounded pathetic even in my own head. But James was patient, kind, and most importantly, had his life together. No secret addictions, no family drama, no expectations that I'd save him from himself. It was refreshing and terrifying in equal measure. 3 months after David left rehab, my mom called. I almost didn't answer, but something in me still couldn't completely cut them off. Sarah? It's Mom. We need to talk. About what? David's missing. Despite everything, my heart clenched. Missing how? He hasn't been home in a week. He lost his job, apparently he never really had one, just told us he did. His phone's disconnected. We're worried sick. Did you check the casinos? Sarah, please. This is serious. What if something's happened to him? Something has happened to him. It's called consequences. How can you be so cold? Practice, I said, then sighed. Look, I'll make some calls. But Mom, you need to prepare yourself. If David's using again, and we both know he is, then he's going to come back needing money. You can't give it to him. We don't have any money to give, she said quietly. The rent just went up. Your father's medications cost more than we expected. We're struggling. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. The other part, the part that would always be the responsible daughter no matter how hard I tried, ached for them. I'll look for David, I said finally. But that's all I'm promising. I found him, of course. He was staying with a woman he'd met at the casino, playing online poker on her computer while she was at work. When I showed up at her apartment, he had the nerve to look annoyed. What are you doing here? Mom's worried sick. You need to call her. I will when I'm ready. When will that be? When you need money. He glared at me. You know, not everything is about money, Sarah. Really? Name one crisis in your life that wasn't about money. He couldn't. Just call Mom, I said, turning to leave. Let her know you're alive. It's the least you can do after everything she's sacrificed for you. I didn't ask her to sacrifice anything. No, you just made it inevitable. David's recovery lasted exactly 127 days from when he left rehab. I know because I was counting, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It always did with David. He'd returned to my parents' apartment after I found him, full of apologies and promises. He even got a real job this time, selling cars at a dealership in Somerville. For a few months, things seemed stable. He was contributing $500 a month toward rent, attending GA meetings, or so he claimed, and staying away from casinos. My parents were cautiously optimistic. I was just cautious. He's really trying this time, Mom told me during one of our stilted phone conversations. We'd resumed contact, but things were different now. Formal. Careful. Like acquaintances rather than family. That's good, I said neutrally. You could come for dinner Sunday. See for yourself. I have plans. I always had plans now. Real ones, not excuses. James and I had been dating for 6 months. I joined a book club. I was training for a half marathon. I was building a life that didn't revolve around my family's drama. "We miss you," Mom said softly. "I miss who we used to be," I replied. "But that family doesn't exist anymore." The call about David's latest catastrophe came on a Thursday night. I was at James's apartment, cooking dinner together, when my phone rang. "Dad, this time." "Sarah, I'm sorry to bother you, but it's David." I put down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. "What now?" "He's been arrested." "For what?" "Embezzlement. From the dealership. They say he stole $75,000. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was just so predictable. "Sarah, this isn't funny. He could go to prison." "Good," I said. "Maybe he'll finally face some consequences. The dealership says they won't press charges if we pay it back. They liked David, believe it or not. They want to give him a chance." "You don't have $75,000. "No," Dad admitted. "We don't." "So what are you asking me?" "Nothing. I thought you should know. But I knew better." This was how it always started. Just information, just sharing news. Then would come the hints about their difficult situation. Then the sad stories about David's struggles. Finally, the request for money. "I have to go," I said. "Good luck with everything." "Sarah, wait. We're having a family meeting tomorrow night. To discuss options. Will you come?" "No. Please. We're still your family." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm standing, I'm just the emergency fund you call when David fucks up." "That's not true. When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my job, my relationship? When was the last time I mattered for any reason other than my ability to bail out David?" His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said. "Handle David yourselves. I'm done." But of course, they couldn't handle it themselves. They never could. 2 days later, Mom showed up at my office. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging loose. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was showing gray roots. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the months since selling the house. "Please," she said, sitting across from my desk. "Just hear me out. You have 5 minutes. The dealership will accept a payment plan. $25,000 down, then $2,000 a month for 2 years. If we can manage that, David stays out of prison. And if you can't, he goes to trial. With his record, he'll get 5 to 10 years. Sounds like his problem." "Sarah, please. I know you're angry." "Angry? I'm not angry, Mom. I'm done. There's a difference. He's your brother. He's a black hole. He'll consume everything you give him and still want more. When does it end? When he gets better. He's never going to get better as long as you keep saving him. You're not helping him, you're enabling him. And now you want me to enable him too. I want you to help your family." I wanted a family that valued me as much as the golden child. We don't always get what we want. She started crying then, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't know what else to do. Your father's health is getting worse from the stress. We can barely make rent. If David goes to prison. If David goes to prison, maybe you'll finally be free of him." "How can you say that? How can you not see it? He's destroyed everything, Mom. Your home, your savings, your health, your relationships. And you're still trying to save him. When do you save yourselves?" She left without an answer. But I knew they'd find the money somehow. They always did. They borrowed from Dad's brother in California, Uncle Henry, who'd always been the family success story. A surgeon who'd made smart investments and lived below his means. He lent them $25,000 at 0 interest, with the understanding that it would be deducted from any future inheritance. So now David's stolen from Uncle Henry's family too, I told Amy over drinks. This is insane. How do they not see what's happening? Love makes people stupid. Or maybe it's not love. Maybe it's guilt, fear, habit. I don't know anymore. What does James think about all this? I haven't told him everything. How do you explain that your family chose your addict brother over you? That they sold your inheritance to pay his gambling debts? It's humiliating. It's not your fault. No, but it's my history. And I'm tired of it defining me. For a while after the embezzlement crisis, things settled into a new pattern. David was on probation from the court, mandatory weekly GA meetings, and had to maintain employment. He got a job at a call center, something he couldn't steal from. My parents managed their bills, barely. I kept my distance, building my own life. James and I moved in together. It was a big step, one I might not have taken when I was still anchored to my family's drama. But I was learning to make decisions based on what I wanted, not what I thought I should do. I love your place, Mom said when she stopped by uninvited one Saturday. It's so bright. Thanks. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd see how you're doing. She was never just in the neighborhood. Our apartment was 40 minutes from theirs. What's wrong now? I asked, not bothering with pretense. Nothing's wrong. Can't a mother visit her daughter? A mother can. You only visit when you need something. She flinched but didn't deny it. I missed you. We both do. How's David? He's managing. The probation is hard on him. Prison would be harder. Sarah, why are you really here, Mom? She sat on my couch, my nice couch that I'd saved for and chosen myself, not a hand-me-down or thrift store find. Your father needs a procedure. His heart. Medicare covers most of it. But how much? The copays and deductibles will be about $10,000. You borrowed $25,000 from Uncle Henry 6 months ago. Where did that money go? David's legal fees, the payment plan for the dealership, rent, living expenses. It goes fast. Especially when you're supporting 2 households. David pays rent. $500 a month? That doesn't even cover utilities. You're still subsidizing his life while you can't afford Dad's medical care. What are we supposed to do? Throw him out on the street? Yes. That's exactly what you should do. He's a 38-year-old man, not a child. He's our child. And what am I? You're successful. You don't need us. There it was. The truth, finally. I was successful, so I didn't matter. I was responsible, so I didn't need help. I was stable, so I could be ignored until they needed money. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, get out of my home. Don't come back unless you're ready to have an honest conversation about why David matters more than me. She left, and I spent the rest of the day crying on James's shoulder. He still didn't know the whole story, but he knew enough to hold me and let me grieve. Family stuff, he asked gently. My family is broken, I told him. And I can't fix it. Maybe it's not your job to fix it. I used to think it was. I promised my grandmother. But she's dead, and I'm tired of living for dead people's dreams. Dad had his procedure the next month. I don't know how they paid for it. I didn't ask. I sent a card to the hospital but didn't visit. The responsible daughter was on sabbatical. 8 months passed. 8 months of minimal contact, stilted holiday gatherings, and careful distance. I was building boundaries, my therapist said. Healthy ones. It felt like building walls, but maybe that's what boundaries were, walls to keep the poison out. James proposed on my 35th birthday. A quiet dinner at our favorite restaurant, a ring that was elegant but not flashy, a promise of a life built on mutual respect and love rather than obligation and guilt. I said yes without hesitation. I want to meet your family properly, he said. Before the wedding. I know things are complicated, but they're still your parents. So I arranged a dinner. Neutral Ground, a restaurant in Cambridge. Just the four of us. David wasn't invited. I warned James it might be awkward. I can handle awkward, he assured me. The dinner started well enough. My parents were on their best behavior, asking James about his work in biotech, his family in Connecticut, his interests. Normal parent questions. For an hour, we almost felt like a normal family. Then Dad's phone rang. I'm sorry, he said, glancing at the screen. I should take this. Dad, we're at dinner, I protested. But he was already standing, phone to his ear. I could see his face change as he listened. Mom watched him, her hand creeping to her throat in that nervous gesture I knew too well. What is it? She asked when he returned. That was David's probation officer. He missed his check-in. And his drug test from last week came back positive for amphetamines. What does that mean? Mom asked, though we all knew. It means he's violated probation. There's a warrant out for his arrest. Oh God, Mom breathed. Where is he? I don't know. His phone's off. And just like that, my engagement dinner became about David. Again. Always. We should go, Mom said, already gathering her purse. We need to find him before the police do. No, I said firmly. We're not leaving. We're having dinner with my fiancée. Sarah, your brother is in trouble. My brother is always in trouble. Tonight is about my engagement. My future. For once, can something be about me? How can you be so selfish? Mom snapped. David could go to prison. Then he goes to prison. He violated probation. He failed a drug test. These are his choices, his consequences. We're his parents. We can't just abandon him. But you can abandon me? You can walk out on my engagement dinner to chase after David again. It's different. How? How is it different? Explain to me why every milestone in my life has to be overshadowed by David's latest crisis. Dad looked torn, glancing between Mom and me. Maybe we could split up. Your mother can go look for David, and I'll stay. No, I said. If you leave this table to deal with David, we're done. All of us. I'm getting married, and I need to know, are you my parents, or are you David's enablers? Because you can't be both anymore. The silence stretched. James reached for my hand under the table, a silent support. Sarah, Mom said carefully, you're asking us to choose between our children. No, I'm asking you to choose between your daughter's engagement dinner and your son's self-inflicted crisis. I'm asking you to put me first, just once. Just this once. They looked at each other, having one of their silent conversations. And I knew, before they spoke, what they'd chosen. They always chose the same thing. We have to go, Dad said quietly. I'm sorry, James. Welcome to the family. They left. Just stood up and walked out, leaving James and me sitting at a table set for four. I'm so sorry, I told him, fighting tears. Don't apologize, he said firmly. You did nothing wrong. You must think my family is insane. I think your family is sick. And I think you're incredibly strong for surviving them. We finished dinner, just the two of us. But something had shifted. The last thread connecting me to my parents had finally snapped. David was arrested 2 days later, passed out in a stolen car with drugs in his possession. The probation violation plus new charges meant serious prison time. My parents hired a lawyer with money they didn't have, mortgaging their future once again for their lost cause son. I didn't attend the trial. I was busy planning my wedding, a small, elegant affair that James and I were paying for ourselves. We sent my parents an invitation, but I knew they wouldn't come. They'd be visiting David in prison. Instead, I focused on building my new family. James's parents were lovely, welcoming me without reservation. His sister became the sister I'd never had. They showed me what healthy family dynamics looked like: support without enabling, love without condition, boundaries without guilt. "Have you heard from your parents?" Dr. Kim asked during a session. "They send texts occasionally. Updates about David mostly. I don't respond." "How does that feel?" "Free," I said immediately, then thought about it. "And sad. I mourn the parents they could have been. But I can't keep waiting for them to choose me." "You're choosing yourself. That's powerful." 2 months before my wedding, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Sarah Chen?" The voice was professionally concerned. "Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your father has been admitted. You're listed as his emergency contact." My heart stopped. Despite everything, I still loved him. "What happened?" "He's had a heart attack. He's stable now, but he's asking for you." I went. Of course I went. The responsible daughter never fully dies. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, fragile in a way I'd never seen him. Mom sat beside him, looking equally diminished. They brightened when they saw me. "Sarah," Dad said weakly. "You came." Of course I came. We sat in awkward silence before Mom spoke. "David was sentenced last week. 5 years, eligible for parole in 3. "Okay," I said neutrally. "The lawyer says it could have been worse." "Okay." "Sarah," Dad said, "we're sorry. About the dinner. About everything. Are you? Or are you just sorry that you're facing the consequences?" "We've lost everything," Mom said quietly. "The house, our savings, our health. And now we're losing you too. You lost me when you chose David over and over. This is just the natural conclusion." "We love you," Dad said. "We've always loved you." "I know. But you loved David more. Or differently. Or something. And I can't compete with that anymore." "Will you ever forgive us?" Mom asked. "I don't know. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. I can't be your safety net anymore. I can't be the responsible daughter who fixes everything while David breaks it." "We're not asking you to." "Yes, you are. Maybe not today, but eventually. When Dad gets out of the hospital and the bills come due. When David gets out of prison and needs somewhere to stay. When the next crisis hits. You'll call, and you'll ask, because that's what we do." "So what do we do instead?" Dad asked. "I don't know. Figure it out without me. I'm getting married in 2 months. I'm building a life. A good life, with people who put me first. I can't save you anymore." "We don't need saving," Mom said defensively. "Look around, Mom. You're in your 70s, broke, renting, with 1 son in prison and a daughter who can't stand to be around you. If that's not needing saving, I don't know what is." I left shortly after that. Dad recovered, physically at least. They didn't come to my wedding. My wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, filled with people who actually wanted to celebrate with us rather than drama and obligation. James's family embraced me fully, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. We honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of bliss where I turned off my phone and pretended I didn't have a family at all. When we returned, I had 17 missed calls from my mother. "Someone died," I told James, staring at my phone. "You don't know that." 17 calls? Someone's dead, in jail, or in the hospital. Those are the only reasons she calls. But I was wrong. When I finally called back, Mom sounded different. Defeated in a way I'd never heard before. "Sarah? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I was on my honeymoon. What's wrong? We're being evicted." "Again? What happened?" Your father can't work anymore. Between his heart and his back, he's disabled. I'm still tutoring, but it's not enough. We're 3 months behind on rent. How did you get 3 months behind? Silence. Mom. David needed money for his commissary account. And protection. Protection. He's not doing well in prison. Other inmates were threatening him. He needed to pay for protection. I laughed. I couldn't help it. So you chose to pay for David's prison protection instead of your rent? What were we supposed to do? Let him get beaten? Killed? Let him figure it out. He's in prison because of his choices. But no, you'd rather be homeless than let David face consequences. Sarah, we need help. There it was. The ask I'd been waiting for. No. No. That's it. Just no. What else do you want me to say? You chose David over having a home. You chose him over Dad's health. You chose him over me. And now you get to live with those choices. We have nowhere to go. That's not true. You have options. Homeless shelters. Social services. Family members who haven't been drained dry by David's addiction. I can't believe you're being so cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. You sold a $850,000 house to pay David's gambling debts. You had $400,000 in cash and managed to burn through it in less than 2 years. You borrowed money from Uncle Henry. You've destroyed your credit, your health, and your relationships. All for David. And he's still in prison, still an addict, still the black hole at the center of your universe. He's our son. And I'm your daughter. When do I matter as much as he does? You matter. No, I don't. If I mattered, you would have come to my wedding. If I mattered, you would have stayed for my engagement dinner. If I mattered, you would have protected my inheritance instead of selling it for David. I have never, not once in my entire life, mattered as much as David. And I'm done pretending otherwise. So you'll let us be homeless? I'll let you experience the consequences of your choices. Just like you should have let David experience his. Sarah, please. We're desperate. I know. You've been desperate my whole life. Desperate to save David, desperate to fix him, desperate to avoid the truth about what he is. And I can't be part of that desperation anymore. What are we supposed to do? I don't know, Mom. Maybe start by accepting that David is an addict who will never get better as long as you enable him. Maybe stop sending him money you don't have. Maybe realize that you've sacrificed everything for someone who only sees you as an ATM. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You love David more than you love yourselves. More than you love me. More than you love anything. And that love has destroyed everything good in your lives. That's not true, isn't it? Name one thing in your life that David's addiction hasn't touched. One relationship it hasn't damaged. One dream it hasn't destroyed. Silence. That's what I thought. Will you at least help us find somewhere to go? Her voice was small, broken. I'll send you some links to senior services. But that's all. I can't save you, Mom. I've been trying my whole life, and all it did was enable you to enable David. It stops now. Chapter 12. The intervention that wasn't. 2 weeks after that phone call, Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, called me. She lived in Florida, had distanced herself from the family drama years ago. Smart woman. Sarah, I'm worried about your parents. Join the club. I'm serious. Your mother called me crying. They're living in their car. My heart clenched, but I held firm. They have options. They're choosing not to use them. Sarah, they're in their 70s. This isn't safe. Neither was giving all their money to David, but that didn't stop them. I'm flying up next week. I want to do an intervention. Will you participate? I thought about it. One last attempt to make them see reason. For them, or for David? For them. About David. About their enabling. Okay. But I'm not optimistic. The intervention was held at Aunt Patricia's hotel suite. She'd also invited Uncle Henry and my father's brother from California. My parents looked terrible, thin, exhausted, aged a decade in the past year. Living in their car had taken its toll. We're here because we love you, Aunt Patricia began. But we can't watch you destroy yourselves anymore. What followed was 2 hours of family members detailing how David's addiction and my parents' enabling had affected everyone. Uncle Henry talked about the $25,000 he'd never see again. Aunt Patricia described years of declined invitations because David might cause a scene. I talked about the house, the broken promises, the lifetime of being second place. My parents listened, Mom crying quietly, Dad staring at his hands. We hear you, Dad finally said. But what are we supposed to do? He's our son. He's a 39-year-old man who's made his choices, Uncle Henry said firmly. And you need to let him live with those choices. Easy for you to say, Mom snapped. Your children are successful. My children are successful because I didn't enable their failures, he shot back. Are you saying we're bad parents? I'm saying you're parents who've lost everything to an adult child's addiction. And you're about to lose even more if you don't change. What more can we lose? Dad asked bitterly. We have nothing left. You have each other, Aunt Patricia said. You have family who wants to help. But only if you're willing to help yourselves. What does that mean? Mom asked. It means cutting David off completely, I said. No money, no visits, no phone calls. Nothing. We can't abandon him in prison. Yes, you can. He abandoned you first. He abandoned your trust, your love, your future. Every time he placed a bet, he chose gambling over you. It's time to choose yourselves over him. For how long? Forever, Uncle Henry said. Or until he's been clean and self-supporting for at least 5 years. 5 years. That's the minimum to trust an addict, Aunt Patricia said. And even then, no money. Ever. This is cruel, Mom said. No, I said. Cruel is watching your parents live in their car because they gave their house money to a gambling addict. Cruel is being told you matter less than your brother's addiction. Cruel is David taking and taking until there's nothing left. If we agree, Dad said slowly, then what? Then we help, Uncle Henry said. Patricia and I have discussed it. We can help with a security deposit on a small apartment. We can help navigate social services. But only if you commit to cutting David off. I need to think about it, Mom said. There's nothing to think about, I said, standing up. Either you choose to save yourselves, or you choose to keep enabling David. But if you choose David, you lose the rest of us. I'm done watching you destroy yourselves. We all are. I left the intervention not knowing what they'd decide. But I'd said my piece. The rest was up to them. For 3 days, I heard nothing. I went about my life, work, dinners with James, planning our future. We were looking at houses, talking about children. Building the life I'd always wanted, just not in the way I'd planned. Then Aunt Patricia called. They've agreed, she said. They're willing to cut David off. Really? I was skeptical. They'd made promises before. Your mother's the holdout, but your father is firm. He says he wants to live whatever years he has left in peace, not chaos. What about Mom? She'll follow his lead. She always has. But Sarah, this is going to be hard for them. They'll need support. I can't be their support system, Patricia. I've been carrying them my whole life. I'm not asking you to carry them. Just, don't completely cut them off. They're trying. I'll think about it. Uncle Henry and Aunt Patricia got them into a subsidized senior apartment in Quincy. 1 bedroom, basic but clean, with social services on site. It was a far cry from their house in Lexington, but it was safe and affordable. I helped them move in, because despite everything, I couldn't let them struggle alone. Watching them arrange their few remaining possessions in the tiny space was heartbreaking. It's not much, Mom said, trying to find space for their photos. It's enough, Dad said firmly. We don't need much. They'd signed a contract with Uncle Henry. In writing, he insisted. No contact with David for 1 year minimum. No money, ever. If they broke the agreement, all support would be withdrawn. Seems harsh, Mom had said when signing. So is living in your car, Uncle Henry replied. The first test came 2 weeks later. David called them from prison, collect. Dad refused the charges. That was hard, he told me later. Hearing the operator say his name and saying no. But you did it. I did. Your mother cried for hours after. But she didn't call him back. No. She didn't. It was a start. 6 months passed. My parents held to their agreement, though I knew it was killing them. Mom aged visibly, the stress of not knowing how David was doing wearing on her. But they didn't break. They attended counseling through the senior center. They went to Al-Anon meetings. They were trying. I maintained careful contact. Sunday dinners once a month, always at restaurants, always with James. Controlled interactions with clear boundaries. We talked about safe topics, the weather, James's work, their health. Never David. How's your pottery class? I asked Mom during one dinner. Good. I made a vase. It's lopsided, but it holds water. That's all that matters, James said kindly. These dinners were stilted, formal. We were all trying to build something new from the ashes of what we'd been. It was hard work. Then David got creative. He couldn't call them directly, they'd blocked the prison numbers. So he had another inmate call, pretending to be a counselor. Mr. Chen? This is Counselor Williams from the prison. I'm calling about your son David. Dad, suspicious but worried, stayed on the line. What about him? He's been injured in an altercation. He's in the infirmary. He's asking for you. How badly is he hurt? I can't discuss details over the phone. But he's very upset. He keeps saying he needs to talk to his parents. To apologize. Dad's resolve wavered. He called me, hands shaking as he relayed the conversation. It's a scam, Dad. David's manipulating you. But what if he's really hurt? Then the prison would send official notification. They wouldn't have some counselor call. Should I call the prison to check? No. That's still making David the center of attention. That's what he wants. It took every ounce of Dad's willpower, but he didn't call. 2 days later, they received a letter from David, perfectly healthy, furious that his ploy hadn't worked. Dad threw it away unread. I'm proud of you, I told him at our next dinner. It doesn't feel good, he admitted. It feels like abandoning my child. He abandoned you first, I reminded him. Every bet he placed, every debt he accumulated, every lie he told, those were all choices to put gambling before family. I know. But knowing and feeling are different things. The next test came 3 months later. David was being transferred to a different facility and needed someone to accept his personal belongings. The prison called my parents directly. We can't, Dad told them. We're no longer in contact with David. But you're his parents, the clerk said, confused. Not anymore, Dad replied and hung up. Mom broke down after that call. What if something happens to him? What if he dies in there thinking we don't love him? He knows you love him, I said. He's counted on that love his whole life. That's the problem. How can love be a problem? When it enables destruction. When it comes without boundaries. When it sacrifices everyone else for one person's addiction. She nodded, but I could see she didn't really understand. Maybe she never would. But as long as she maintained the boundaries, understanding could come later. It's been 2 years since my parents were evicted, since the intervention, since they cut David off. 2 years of rebuilding, of therapy, of learning what life looks like without constant crisis. My parents have found a rhythm in their small apartment. Dad volunteers at a food bank, using his accounting skills to help with their books. Mom teaches ESL at the community center, finding purpose in helping others learn. They're poor in money but richer in peace than they'd been in decades. I slept through the night, Mom told me recently, wonder in her voice. No nightmares about David. No anxiety attacks. Just sleep. How long since that happened? Years. Maybe a decade. Their health has improved. Without the constant stress, Dad's heart has stabilized. Mom's migraines have decreased. They look older but somehow lighter, like they've set down a burden they'd carried too long. I'm pregnant now. James and I are expecting our first child, a daughter. When I told my parents, Mom cried. I want to be a better grandmother than I was a mother, she said. You were a good mother, I said carefully. You just lost your way. I chose David over you. Every time. That's not good parenting. It was the first time she'd acknowledged it so plainly. No excuses, no justifications. Just truth. No, I agreed. It wasn't. But you're choosing differently now. Are we? Or are we just choosing because David's not here to choose? Does it matter? You're making better choices. That's what counts. We've had family therapy sessions, the three of us. Unpacking decades of dysfunction, learning new patterns. It's painful work, but necessary. I promised to take care of you, I told them in one session. Grandma made me promise. But I built my whole life around that promise, and it nearly destroyed me. We never asked you to do that, Mom said. No, but you accepted it. You let me be the responsible one while pouring everything into David. You took my stability for granted. We did, Dad admitted. We knew you'd be okay, so we focused on David. But I wasn't okay. I was drowning in responsibility and resentment. We see that now, Mom said. Too late, but we see it. It's not too late. We're here, talking. That's something. David gets released next month. Early parole for good behavior. My parents received notification but haven't responded. They're terrified but determined. He'll show up, Dad said. He'll have nowhere else to go. You can't let him in, I said firmly. We know. But knowing and doing. I'll be there, I promised. When he shows up, call me. I'll help you hold the boundary. What if he's changed? Mom asked hopefully. What if prison really reformed him? Then he'll prove it by respecting your boundaries and building his own life, I said. Real change doesn't demand immediate forgiveness or financial support. What if he's homeless? There are programs. Halfway houses. Services for ex-convicts. He can access them like everyone else. It seems so cold. It's not cold. It's reality. He's a 41-year-old man who needs to take responsibility for his life. They nodded, but I could see their fear. 30 years of enabling isn't undone in 2 years of therapy. The real test is coming. I've made my own preparations. James and I have security cameras, a restraining order ready to file if needed. I won't let David destroy the life we've built. Are you scared? James asked last night. Terrified, I admitted. Not of David, but of my parents. Of them choosing him again. And if they do, then we protect our daughter. She doesn't grow up in that dysfunction. They've come so far, though. They have. But addiction is cunning. And David knows exactly how to manipulate them. What do you think will happen? I thought about it, hand on my growing belly. I think they'll be tested like never before. I think David will pull out every stop, tears, threats, promises. And I hope, they'll hold the line. But you're not sure. I'm not sure of anything when it comes to my family. I've learned to hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And if they fail, if they let him back in, then we maintain our boundaries. We protect our family. And I grieve the grandparents our daughter could have had. That's sad. It is. But it's less sad than watching them destroy themselves for David again. I can't do that. I won't. James held me close. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Together, I agreed. That's all that matters. Next week, my parents will face their biggest test. David will be free, and they'll have to choose, their son or their sanity, their past or their future, the cycle of destruction or the peace they've found. I've done what I can. I've shown them another way. I've proved that boundaries can exist alongside love. Now it's up to them. The responsible daughter has learned to let go, to let others make their choices and live with the consequences, to protect her own family above all else. My childhood home is gone, sold for gambling debts. My inheritance is spent. My family is fractured beyond repair. But from those ashes, I've built something new. Something strong. Something mine. I touch my belly, feeling my daughter kick. She'll never know the weight of impossible promises or the burden of being the responsible one. She'll never compete with an addict sibling for her parents' love. She'll be free in ways I never was. That's my gift to her. Not a house or money or even a perfect family. Just freedom from the cycles that nearly destroyed me. Freedom to choose her own path without the weight of other people's addictions. The Chen family saga continues, but I'm writing a different chapter now. One where love comes with boundaries, where help doesn't mean enabling, where family means the people who choose you as much as you choose them. David gets out in 7 days. In 7 days, we'll know if my parents have truly changed or if they've just been marking time until their addiction, to him, could resume. I'm hoping for the best. I'm prepared for the worst. And either way, I'm at peace with my choices. The responsible daughter is still responsible, just not for them. Not anymore. And that's the most responsible choice I've ever made.